Males from 6 different nests were gathered in the trees, linking branches, binding sitting spots, readying cook ovens, and helping the organizer, Puzdot, pull meat up from the human's float. A vibration danced through the strands. The younger male's eyes pivoted outward as their bodies instinctively bowed. Puzdot felt it through the anchor line wound around his arm while he was in the boat. He turned 3 eyes up to the canopy, one eye focused on Bubba. "They're here," the orb in the boat edge translated. Bubba finished the knot and looked up. "How many?" "All directions." He turned 2 eyes onto Bubba. "All are represented." He paused. "I worried about Sliplegs, you're human." He chittered. "I feel him. They are at the territory edge. They are coming." Bubba looked up, watching the living green giant sway in the breeze. I don't see anyone." Puzdot tapped his finger on the line. He paused, feeling the multitude of vibrations, parsing them out. "You should bring your loud tube." Bubba lowered his gaze onto the smaller male xenoarch. "You said it was going to be peaceful." "My son, he and I have spent many days and nights in these trees. We have trembles only we know of each other. He is worried, fearful of who he is with. There is something wrong with his party." "They do something to Dahlia?" Bubba sighed, a slight groan escaping. "I knew bringing her out was going to bite me in the ass. It feels like the mother is carrying her. Her movements are off. The human is alive. She is adjusting as she moves." Bubba walked across the boat, balancing himself with each step. He looked at Puzdot for a moment before gently putting his finger on the taut anchor line leading up to the triangle bound in the canopy. "Amazing! You feel all of that through this?" Puzdot focused all 4 eyes on him. "Not now. You are dampening it." Bubba flinched, moving his hand off. "Sorry." The xenoarch looked over at the human's house at the edge of the open pond of water. "Alexandra isn't coming?" He shook his head. "She needs the day off. Things been getting to her, all this." He moved his hand up and around. "Too much currently. She doesn't need the stress." He looked at the last of the FNGA slabs to be pulled up. "Should be enough, right? 6 of these fuckers should feed an army." Puzdot mimed a nod. "They will be content enough to talk peacefully." Bubba looked over at the large pot centered in the middle of the boat. "I think you all are going to love the gumbo." Puzdot turned 3 eyes up, tugging on the line as he did so. One eye stayed looking at Bubba. "Don't tell them what you put in it." "I tested it all with the doctor. It scanned fine, perfectly consumable for you folks." He turned all 4 eyes onto Bubba. "Maybe just feed it to the guys. They would do well with the nourishment." Bubba leaned back slightly, lifting his hands up. "I seen how they treat you all. You know it ain't right." Puzdot let go of the line as it started lifting up, pulled by a dozen hands high up in the canopy. "It is correct. It is how it always has been. It is our way. Doesn't make it right. Humans have tried all sorts of slave methods over the years. None of them were right." Puzdot walked over to the pot, balancing around it with his 4 hands out. "Your men bowed to your women too?" "I'm sure some do, yeah. Women used to bow to men. We had whole conquered people bowing to each other. We conquered aliens, had them bowing. There were robots, had people bowing. All sorts of bowing, and ain't none of it right." The xenoarch wound a loop of thread around the pot handles, making a lift anchor point. "If you think it is not correct, then what is the correct way in your view?" The human laughed. "This us out here doing what we want. We hunt, eat, hang out. We're free out here." Puzdot looked up at him with all 4 eyes. "We have worked several days to provide a feast for the females. My life is work for the females. I am not free out here. Maybe you are, but not me." Bubba looked up as the anchor line swayed in the breeze as it lowered back down, empty. "Well, I'm free out here, doing what I want, and I want to help you. This world is a prison to you. You have told me many times." He laughed. "Yes, but there are far worse ways to live." "But they are correct ways." Bubba caught the line and walked it over to the pot. "I'm not good at this philosophizing. I like this. This is fun, and they shouldn't be treating you guys bad like they do." Puzdot attached the anchor line to the anchor point. You have changed my life for better, Bubba Yaga. He chittered slightly. But they treat us as we should be treated. We are their males, their mates. We serve, we mate. It is who we are. Bubba watched as Pusdot tapped the line, and the pot started lifting up in the air. That's freaking incredible! What's the word? Pusdot stared at him, eyes darkening. Tensile strength. Your strings are amazing strong. Yes, I know. Bubba smiled at him. I'm just saying there are better ways to live. The swamp is violent. Females are violent. Our ways is the safe path. We let them wage the wars, and we will live through them to serve whoever wins. The two stood watching for a moment as the anchor line started coming back down from the triangular platform. Bubba walked over to his seat, grabbing his shotgun and put his arm through the shoulder strap. He looked back over as Pusdot took the line in his hand, waiting. Well, let's go meet these mothers. Pusdot chittered. You are welcome to. I will stay underneath with my sons. He lifted his head up as the anchor line went taut. The twins are starting to serve the first chunks. They have received praise for their cooking. He watched Bubba with 3 eyes as he crossed over the boat. They will earn names soon, maybe be chosen as mates today. Bubba paused, touching the chain attaching to boat to the anchor weight in the murk below. It kicked tight. He looked over at his friend and took his hand. Don't drop me. I will not drop you, Bubba. I am more worried about crushing your internals. He chittered, wrapping his short arms around Bubba's chest. Hold on to me. Bubba wrapped his arms back, feeling the pointed hairs poke into his skin, the carapace like soft armor. All right, let's get this show going. Pusdot tapped the line, and they started ascending up toward the canopy. Bubba looked around the lower platform, noting the numerous males busy prepping the fenja slabs and placing the cuts into readied ovens. Eyes turned up toward him as he walked around them. Pusdot, walking beside him, reached out, touching fingers as they went by the other males. They made their way across the springy floor to the twins, who were maneuvering the massive pot. Bubba pulled the pack he brought up off his shoulder and placed down the heating square. On to this, he said, waving them over. They widened their eyes and started scooting the pot over. Then with a heave they lifted it on, rattling the lid. Bubba activated it with a swipe of his finger and it began heating back up. He stood up and looked around. Now this is a feed. He looked up through the shaped limbs and bindings. They're all up there? Pusdot nodded toward his friend. They are adjusting amongst themselves now, he said, the orb floating beside him. After they are fed, they will want to see you. Why? I thought they were just doing a peace treaty or something. Pusdot stared at him for a moment. Yes. With you. Bubba chuckled. Oh, yeah, guess that makes sense. He looked around and noted a smaller bound branch, curved back and strung tight. Well, I guess we wait, he said, walking over and relaxing on it. Pusdot walked over beside him, crawling up on the weavings, and relaxed. Mother Darkness was eager for this. It is a show of power to feed so many. We will garner much respect, promote negotiations. Bubba nodded, looking around as the male camps began socializing while they cooked. It's a feast, I can imagine. They watched as cuts were taken out from the ovens, and the procession of males started up the web holes toward the females up above. Slip Legs descended and made his way over to the twins. His eyes noted his father and gave a slight bow. One of the twins pulled a cut out from an oven nearby and handed it to him. Slip Legs took it and went back up the web hole. Pusdot leaned over toward Bubba, whispering, He is still tapping worrisomely. Bubba patted his friend's shoulder as he stood up. He adjusted his shotgun on his back and looked around, noting his pack, the cooking gumbo, the twins, and Pusdot. Let the gumbo get back to boiling. Start serving it. I got some collapsible bowls in the bag. I'm going to go on and head up, he said, tilting his head toward the vertical web tunnel. Pusdot rose up. I will take you. Bubba raised a hand. Take care of the boys here. I got this. The Xenoarch chittered, walking over to the webbing. I will carry you. It is okay. Bubba looked up the tube. I think it'll speak better of me if I don't get carried up this time. He looked down at his friend. It's ribbed, kinda like a ladder. I can do it. You do not climb well. But I can climb. I can handle this. He reached out and tapped the orb, changing its follow orders to Pusdot. They have the translators up there, right? Yes. They have been bargained for. The feast is accommodating the trade. Good. I'm leaving the orb down here with you. He looked up the tube and reached, grabbing the first makeshift rung. He pulled, testing its holding capability. It moved, stretching, but held. It's better they learn, trust their own gear. They're scared of you, of humans. Pusdot looked up the tube. They feel you moving already. Bubba laughed. That shit's spooky, you know that? He shook his head and started climbing up toward the gathering of the womenfolk. Bubba reached out of the top of the hole, grabbing at some loose floor weave, pulling himself out. He flopped out, bouncing slightly, a stick poking him in the back. He took several deep breaths as he looked around the area. Dozens of eyes stared at him, several he recognized as females he had met. Mandibles chewed on meat chunks, but none moved toward him. He sat up, looking around, finding Darkness sitting with her females at the higher end of the gathering. Hello. I'm Tillman Lafayette Gumpreys. Everyone calls me TL or Bubba, whatever you prefer. I answer to all sorts. Hell, even a good wave and a whistle if you want. He chuckled, still none moved. He looked around, noting the rectangles hanging from larger females in the center of other groups. He heard the translators issuing out their garbled Xenoarch words, and then saw Gorepul and Quietbite. He waved over at them, noting the large number of females in the group. He watched as males rose out of the tunnels, bringing more food to hand out. So, how's the food? Little light on seasoning, am I right? One of the rectangle-wearing females from an unknown group raised her head up, looking with two eyes toward Darkness. I do not like how it moves, her rectangle repeated in human. Another mother raised her body up, speaking. I heard they are squishy. You have it here. Why do you not crush it? Bubba looked around, hairs standing up on his arms and neck. The eyes, the eating, the weird stillness of all of them was unnerving. The large female mother with Gorepul rose up taller than the others, extending herself. Their power is not in their body. They are different, very different than us. They come from entirely different world, flat world. They are made for the flat, she chittered. I am fond of this male for climbing, even though it is more feeble than a fresh hatched. Bubba looked over at the mother, and then noticed Dahlia standing behind her leg, mud, string, and leaves camouflaging her body. Dahlia met his eyes, shaking her head. What the hell are you doing? He asked loudly. Mother Silent Cut pivoted an eye down toward her human. Other mothers caught sight of her attention and looked. Bubba noted none reacted to her and looked around. Mother Darkness rose up. What are you doing, Mother Silent Cut? I have remained quiet, letting the feast be first, but the fact he has addressed it so bluntly. Silent Cut looked over at her sister. I am here, as requested, honoring our bond. Darkness hissed and looked at the large female next to her sister. Mother Crusher, you signal you are guest under my sister. This I do not understand, bowing yourself one as strong as you? She looked back at her sister. Explain, my body, my flesh. You are weakened, same as I. How have you done this? Bubba stared at Dahlia, eyes wide. Silent Cut looked around the room, moving with calm motions. The Xenoarch females paused for a moment, slight leg movements feeling the webbing. Her eyes looked at her two large daughters, widening before she spoke again. These humans are humans. They are so much more capable than us. Their science magic is beyond anything I could imagine, yet I am learning. This human, Bubba, is a feeble male, and he alone has crippled our tribes. Making ally with him has led to this feast and gathering. He, simple as he is, has proven how dangerous and blessed they can be. She focused on her sister. Imagine if we befriend better ones. Imagine if can take their powers. Silent Cut's clan chittered. The foreign mothers hissed as did their brought daughters. Silent Cut tapped the webs, stepping forward, pausing as she sensed other things in the webs. She widened her eyes and continued. You can't imagine, though. You do not know, cannot see, cannot feel. You still are blinded. You think these things are brutes, beasts to deal with as we always have. I hear it, feel it in your legs. She motioned with her hand for Dahlia to see. Dahlia leapt out, rolling across the webs. The gathering of females shook as they felt her, seeing her motions. Several recoiled, shrinking at the surprise. Silent Cut raised her hands out. I have learned much, but this one, a human, she learns faster than any in my host. Darkness leaned out, looking down at her. My Pusdot made mention you had one living with you. To see her, her movements. She hides. That is incredible. Bubba looked over at Dahlia. Camo? What are you doing? Mother Silent Cut walked over by her human. Sisters, you all are talking about learning, about trade, and are not seeing as I have. Use your eyes. Feel as I feel. They are capable enemies or allies, and I have learned we can become the same. She motioned toward her older male to come forward. Foulness, I stepped in, crawled out next to her, bowing before the females. Speak, mate, Silent Cut commanded. He rose his eyes out toward the gathering while strumming cautiously on the flooring. Mothers, forgive my intrusion on the gathering. Darkness waved her hand in allowance. He noted it, continuing. I have been granted visions from the witch. There are powers beyond, powers she tells us are not human, not of the nests, not anyone's, but everyone's. We can have the power they have. We can feast without end, if we seize it and rise. Silent Cut touched his head, stroking his weak hair. She looked out at the gathering, eyes darting, meeting other eyes. We must do as we do. Seize that which is ours. There is one called the Mayor. He holds the power on this world. There is one called the Owner who holds power beyond this world. Unite with me, sisters, and we can nest amongst the Everlights. She chittered, raising her hands up. The others heard her and started bobbing, but stopped. Eyes turned as something else was moving up the webbing. Alexandra was enjoying some of Bubba's ale on the porch, watching whatever the hell those things were, flying around over the water. Fucking alien bugs, she muttered to herself. She took several long breaths, enjoying the peace of her porch, soaking in the odd red midday light. She sniffed the air, then took another whiff. Her stomach growled at the smell of her husband's gumbo. God damn it, Bubba! She stood up and looked out across the water, noting the thread hanging over his decked-out fishing boat. She scanned around the porch and saw a kayak. Damn if I'm going to miss a good meal. She sat the empty bottle on one of Bubba's shoddily crafted tables and went inside. She stripped out of her morning wear and started looking through her closet. She stopped her hands looking at her dotted dress, then shook her head. Nah, he'd like it, but they wouldn't care. She went over to her long black dress. Too fancy. She looked at jeans, pants, several blouses, matching colors, and then stopped, staring at the dress the spiders made for her. Fuck it, let's see what happens. She exited out the front door in her silken dress, a crucible holstered on one hip, her starbreaker on her right. She took a breath, eyeing the kayak, and reached down with her bare foot. She eased down the ladder and got in, pulling the paddle free. She raised her head up as she made her way across the water, her nose focused on the gumbo rather than the rot of the swamp. She reached Bubba's boat, tied off, and climbed over. Gently, she steadied herself, standing as the boat rocked back and forth. A couple steps, and she was at the dangling thread line. Alexandra looked up into the mess of debris hanging in the canopy above. She noted the hole the line was hanging from and took a breath. This is stupid, she said just as her stomach grumbled. She shook her head and reached up, threading the line around her arm, tugging. Pusdot felt the tug through his feet from across the floor. He looked around as other felt it as well. The twins were quick to rise, darting over to the hole as they felt the familiar pulse thrumming up the anchor line. They reached it and started pulling her up. As she reached the lip and climbed in, the other males began raising their heads. Alexandra moved quickly away from the hole, shaking slightly. Damn, we're high up! Pusdot moved close to her, easing her away. You are safe here, the orb translated. Why are you here, though? She smiled, laughing, and looked over toward the pot. Got hungry. She made her way over, every eye fixed on her. She opened the pot and took a smell. Oh, damn that man, but he can cook. She started looking around and noticed Pussdot offering one of Bubba's bowls to her. Thank you, sir. She reached down, scratching his head. Several male heads bobbed as they watched the interaction. She looked around as she scooped out a bowl. Are you all not eating? Pussdot looked around, an eye still fixed on her. They are worried about the food. They will not touch it. Bubba tested it like legit. He felt bad about almost killing you, you know. She pointed over to the bag as she scooped a bowlful. Grab me a spoon, Puss. Pussdot complied, bringing it over to her. She smelled it and then took a bite, gently spooning it into her mouth, blowing to cool it. Hot damn, that's good. She looked over at the twins. You boys, get you a bowl. Eat with me. Pussdot watched as eyes darkened, heads bowing. Mother Alexandra, they... She shook her head, cutting him off. Don't give me that shit. You all are always hungry. Eat with me. The twins moved over, bowing slightly as they did, and got bowls and spoons. She smiled at them, patting the woven floor as she sat. Sit. Eat with me. They filled their bowls and sat beside her. They mirrored her motions and started eating as she did. After the first bite, their heads began bobbing. She laughed slightly. Good, isn't it? The one on the right spoke up. Very good. Thank you, Queen Mother, Pussdot hissed. She glared at him, causing him to shrink slightly. Alexandra then looked around, noting other small ones amongst the males. You all, get over here, eat with me. In unison, the older males began bowing, closing their eyes darker than she had ever seen. One by one, the newly hatched boys crawled over. The bowls were large to them, and 3 carried over a single bowl, sharing it as they sat near her. She smiled, looking around the gathering. There's a bunch. Get in here, you idiots. Pussdot rose up, his arms shaking. Yes, we will eat with you. She watched as the younger ones got their fill and passed empty bowls to the older ones to refill and eat from. So, Puss, what's going on up there? Bubba is talking to them. I just felt Dahlia appear from nothing. Mother Silent Cut is peeking a lot. Alexandra shook her head. I don't like that Dahlia. She's quiet, and then she talks so much, bothers me. She reached over and scratched one of the twins gently on the neck. I'ma name you Benny. I knew a Benny once. He loved when I scratched him like this, fell asleep in seconds. Pussdot shivered as she named him. Benny. He mouthed the human word. I do not. The other males repeated the foreign word. Eyes turned toward the young male, growing wide. Benny! She looked around. You all are so weird. She laughed and looked up. Okay, I sat long enough. Need to move? She looked at one of the tubes leading up. This how Bubba got up there? Pussdot rose up beside her. Yes, why? She shrugged. That idiot in a room full of women? He's probably stumbling over his own tongue. Your tongues can come out that far? Pussdot asked. She shook her head. It's a metaphor. I don't care if alien or not. Human males get stupid ideas if left on their own. She walked over to the vertical shaft and looked up. I better make sure I don't have any competition. Pussdot trembled as he felt the women above notice her climbing up.